Welcome to Love Sophia, musings of a wholehearted woman. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever time it is in your place. I thank you for being here and for having the intention to become a better person in this broken world, in the hopes that we will become part of the healing process. I also thank you, especially all the listeners who found this podcast helpful. I'm very much overwhelmed with happiness with your kind feedback on our first episode. I had conversations with some of our listeners, and I also got ideas and more reflections about that. But today, I will not talk about the reflections that I had, but I will talk about it in another time because I believe that there is a need for us to talk first about the topic we have for today. And it is entitled Knowing Our Circle of Influence. Okay, so you might ask, so what is the circle of influence? But before that, I have a question that I want you to think about. Have you been frustrated of other people? Have you asked, why are they like that? I already told them to change something about their attitude, about their way of thinking, but it seems like it doesn't work. Or probably we think about certain things that we hope that we have. Like in my place, in our culture, we have this common saying, sana all we have the good things that other people have, the relationships, the kind of relationships that other people have. It seems like we think that the grass is greener in our neighbor's yard. Or maybe we have this wish that we are back in the days where things were simpler and easier. Probably when we were still children. No much drama or no much complications in life, burdens, etc. Or probably you tend to think about many worst case scenarios in your life, that you do everything, you plan ahead of time for all those scenarios so that all of this won't happen. Okay, so that's the context that we have for today, because I want you to acknowledge that you are not alone in this kind of thinking. I myself had this for a while in the past, especially when things or my life become tough. So just like you, I also have this kind of tendencies. But what is important is that we acknowledge it and we try to become aware of it. We catch ourselves when we are already thinking about it. And with that awareness, as I always say to the friends or my friends or people that I talk to, that awareness is key. That's the very first step towards becoming a better person, towards changing. That awareness is very much essential. So, now that we know what tendencies we have, the next thing that we have to do is to sort out the information that comes into our mind. Okay, another important step is that not only acknowledging that we have these tendencies, we have these thoughts, we tend to behave this way and that way, but also, I believe what distinguishes a person who wants to change really and who's serious to improve is that they process the information. All right. So what we will do is to distinguish what we can control and not control. So I have this, I read this book by Stephen Covey, The Habits of Highly Effective People. And before he dived into the 7 habits of highly effective people, he also elaborated on the concept of circle of concern and circle of influence. So if you can imagine, or if you have a pen and paper, I want you to create 2 circles, okay, or think about 2 circles. The little circle inside the bigger circle is our circle of influence, while our circle of concern is on the bigger part, okay? Bigger circle. So, typically, what we have in our minds are our circle of concern. So, for example, the weather, it's raining, so we want that it's sunny. When it's sunny, we want that it's raining because it's too hot, okay? Something like that. Or probably the people who lives inside our house. We don't like their attitude, they're nagging, they are lazy, for example. What else? We have our work, or we have our studies, right? Our teachers or supervisors who are very demanding. So those are some things that that are our circle of concern. So if you want, I want you to list down first. So before we go to the 2 circles that I was talking about earlier, you write down first what are your concerns right now, and later we will process that. We will segregate those. We will distinguish. Okay, all right. So you may pause this podcast and also write down everything that burdens you. Okay, so maybe it's your work, and as much as possible, I want you to be specific. Okay, so what is it in your work? So is it your supervisor, or is it the overwhelming workload that you have? What else? The pressure so that you can accomplish a report. If you're a student, your teacher who is a terror or who's too demanding, or if you have your relationships at home or your loved ones, maybe you want them to change because you see that they have something that they have to change. Really, it's a fact, but they don't want to, or probably they have less time because of their work. So things like that. So I want you to think about that. And then after you write down everything, it doesn't have to be right grammar. You can write in your own language. All right? So please come back to this podcast after that. All right. So now you're back to our podcast, I believe. Okay. Now we will sort it out. So we wanted to distinguish whether it is concern or part of our influence. Okay, so first, let's go to the circle of influence. When we say circle of influence, it's something that we have control over. All right? So if you have your list, you ask yourself, okay, can I do something so that this can be, that I can do something about it? So for example, if you are a student, as I've said earlier, you have a lot of tasks. So maybe you can think of what you have control over is the way you look at your at the subject, okay, or the effort that you can give so that you can accomplish the tasks. So, and also in your work, for example, you don't have any control over your supervisor, okay, but you have control over yourself, how you will respond to it. So if things are overwhelming, the workload is so high, there are many workloads, so you can ask for, maybe you can say no to it if you can, if there is someone who's better equipped as of that moment to create or do something about the things. All right, so in your relationships, if you want other people to change, to give more time to you, probably you have to know on what influence that you can give, that you have rather, okay? So you don't have any, that's a concern, diba? You're concerned because you care for the other person. But if they don't do something about it, because diba, as I've said, they are, awareness is first is the key. The second step is to be able to distinguish whether or not the things that you need, that you have concern about, is it actionable by you. So since you are the one who is able to make them aware of that, the person might not be willing, diba? Or they don't really see that in themselves, that that's something they have to change, okay? So they're not yet open to the idea of changing, because when there's something that we want other people to change, and even in ourselves, diba? Even though we already know about that, since we have to give up that, and we have been so accustomed to it for the longest time that we know, maybe even from our childhood, there are certain things that we benefit from it, okay? So by giving up that habit, for example, we lose something, right? Whatever it is, probably pleasure, probably being able to have free things, diba, coming out of that, or whatever benefits we can get from it. Even though we know that if we give up that one, there will be way more benefits that we can gain from it. But there is that element of fear of the unknown, diba? Fear of the future, of what lies ahead. Because maybe what we hope for, if we change something, it will not be there anymore. It will not go as planned, rather, as what we have in our minds. All right? Okay, so how about the thinking that we would like others to have? I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. I hope it's just fine. Okay, so how about the thinking that typically we wanted to have what other people have? It's quite normal, diba? And it's quite normal. Every one of us, from time to time, feel that other people are better than us. But we have to put in mind that the grass is greener where we water it. All right. And cliche as it sounds, it's a very, it's a very famous saying, but to make it more make it easier for us to digest it is that the people who are able to be successful in what they do, to be happy, they have worked for it. Okay, so they have done something so that they will be wherever that they are right now. And another thing is, we have also thoughts about probably when we are way younger, there are less responsibilities. The world is much easier. There are people who are attending to us. Right now, probably the listeners, as I have seen in the analytics, is that we are already young adults or we are already adults. And we have responsibilities that are put in our back right now. And we're carrying it. But it's part, diba? It's part of growth. And we have to embrace it, right? And we have to know what we can control, okay? And lastly, maybe we have these thoughts that we tend to think about the things that might happen that is wrong. And that's why we wanted to mitigate them all so that it won't happen. Or if we have a goal that it's still in the future, right? We have that dream, but we tend to have this feeling of being burdened or being tired that dream is not yet coming true. Okay? So both of this are not on the present. So that's where I want you to put now, because as if you were able to hear the first episode, the common theme of the podcasts that I do is mindfulness. Okay, so being in the present moment is where we have most control of, because we tend to go to the past, diba? We have this wish na everything is better before. I hope that I can go back there. Or probably we have regrets, right? We have regrets of the decisions that we made in the past. That what if, right? What if I did this? What if I chose this person, for example? What if I chose this career, this path? Maybe right now, I'm in a much better place. Or probably we have this, as I've said earlier, we tend to be in the future, that we think of things that we want to get and we want it now. Okay? And it's a test of patience as well. So that's why we have to go back to the present if we have this kind of thoughts, because it's in the present that we can think about, okay, I don't have any control of what happened in my past, whatever decisions that I made, and even the pains that was inflicted to me before. I don't have any control about it, but I have control on how I will respond today. And knowing that you have control of what you can do today, you can see, it will be clearer to you what are the resources that you have, okay? So that you can move forward, so that you can attain the goals that you have that is still in the future. And being on the present, we are able to be at peace. We are also being able to be calm, to be composed, because we get to think clearer rather than being so stuck in the past or being fearful of the future. Okay? So in my own opinion, and on the people that I tend to talk to about these things, they were able to appreciate, I myself was able to appreciate this concept of being in the present moment. And of course, if you will ask me, do I still have this kind of thinking, okay, that is beyond my control? Of course, I still have, because I'm just a human being, okay? But as I have said, I catch myself. Awareness is key. When I become aware that I already have these thought patterns, I will constantly remind myself, okay, breathe in and breathe out, and focus on the present moment. Focus on what I can control. And of course, I have to forgive myself of the things that I have done in the past, of the decisions that I already can't redo, so that I can be kinder to myself and to be hopeful of the future as well. Because in the present moment, I get to work on the things that will help me meet the dreams that I have in the future. So that's it. Today, we were able to talk about the different circumstances that life's put us, that we also have to think about if they are part of our circle of concern or circle of influence. And I encourage you to focus on the things that you can control. And one of the things that I practice in my life is being in the present moment. And I hope that the circle of influence that you have will also be larger. But for the meantime, if the circle of influence that you have is to focus on how you think about things, focus on that, and know that it will expand in the future, especially if you will become a leader. Okay, you just have to start somewhere, and start with yourself. Start with your thoughts. Start with your emotions. Start to process them. Forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. I hope that I contributed a thing or two for you to keep going and to keep fighting in the journey that we call life. And I hope that you will not only become fruitful for yourself, but also for others, that you will be life-giving to them. And this has been Love Sophia. Thank you for being with me in this journey. Take care.